The Topchubashov Center team is making a series of video interviews with prominent experts in order to analyze the recent war in Nagorno-Karabakh and its implications. Today, our guest is Andrey Makarychev, professor at the University of Tartu, Estonia, who researches Russian foreign and security policies, among others. Professor Makarychev, glad to have this conversation with you. Today we're going to...
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, my pleasure. Today we're going to talk about the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict and its implications for Russia. Opinions in expert community on Russia's weight in South Caucasus following the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict have divided. Some call the Kremlin winner, some loser. How would you assess Russia's gains or losses in the new regional geopolitical picture?
Well, I think it's complicated. It's a very hybrid situation in which you always need to measure all these pros and cons. And I know that many authoritative experts would claim that what happened a few days ago is a major Russian success in the South Caucasus. I would be more cautious, frankly speaking, about that, as I will give you just a number of factors that might not necessarily challenge this kind of celebratory and triumphalist narrative, but put it in a more complicated way, I would say. So one issue that I think might be taken into a serious consideration is that, formally speaking, Armenia is a Russian ally. And this ally is, well, de facto defeated. And then you decide to yourself whether it's good or not to have this overwhelming feeling in one of your ally states that what happened is not good. And as far as I know, this is a prevailing state of mind in Armenia. Whether it might have long-term implications, I don't know, but definitely this is a factor that we need to take into account, assessing how stable are Russian strategic or geopolitical positions in the South Caucasus in general. One more thing, it's just an addition to this factor. Just a few days ago, Putin publicly supported Pashinyan. And he went public with this, saying that Pashinyan is one of major contributor to the peace deal. Okay, that might be the case, but again, as far as I know, Pashinyan is considered a very weak political figure, and his political future is far from being certain. So again, in this situation, supporting someone whose political future is not that brilliant might weaken Russian position. Again, this is not something that we should over-dramatize, but definitely we need to take into account. Then another factor, and it's also formal. During this, the recent conflict, Putin de facto accepted that Nagorno-Karabakh is a territory of Azerbaijan. And now what we see is that Russian troops are deployed there. So basically that means that Russian troops are deployed in the territory belonging to Azerbaijan. So in this case, again, I'm not claiming that this is something that might have an immediate effect, but I'm sure it's just a matter of time when people in Azerbaijan, some people might start, discussing this issue and deploying it in a more, let's say, controversial context. And to that, I would add that Azerbaijan is not formally a Russian ally, at least not to the extent that Armenia was. And the expectations to change, Azerbaijan's foreign policy or having a major say in calibrating Azerbaijan's foreign policy, I think it's completely futile. I think Azerbaijan has a completely different foreign policy strategy, if not philosophy, and it's beyond my imagination how Azerbaijan might somehow align itself to Russia. Then another factor, I think the recent events in Nagorno-Karabakh, they clearly strengthened the relations and this axis between Azerbaijan and Turkey. And Turkey is a NATO member. And in this sense, many things became more clear than they were before. Of course, I do understand that formally Turkey is not mentioned in the final document, but I don't think that it might diminish the role of Turkey. Maybe Turkey is not formally again mentioned, but Turkey might definitely have developed its different roles, like, you know, economic role and the cultural role, and we know all about the Turkic world concept. So I think in this sense, Turkey definitely is one of a major players in the whole situation. And that's exactly what Russia definitely will need to take into account in the South Caucasus and maybe even beyond South Caucasus. Then one more factor, I think that Azerbaijan definitely receives a great deal of sympathy and support from Ukraine. Well, starting from 2014, Ukraine made clear that in this conflict it definitely takes sides, and we know why it happened. So now I think this mutual, how shall I say, gravitation might get an additional momentum. Again, this is not a game changer, but still this is something that we need to take into account. And I don't think that this might anyhow play into Russian hands. And one more thing, basically more cultural or geocultural. I think what happened in recent days or weeks was a very serious blow to this idea of civilizational geopolitics, in which allegedly Christian nations should kind of, you know, stick together against, let's say, others, something like, you know, a Russian version of, you know, Huntingtonian vision of the world. If we look at the post-Soviet space from this perspective, what we'll see that Russia has major problems with countries with Christian cultural background: Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova, Georgia definitely, and the other way around. Russia has, I would say, very good relations with Kazakhstan, now most likely with Azerbaijan. So, I mean, in this sense, the whole idea of building politics on this reinterpreted civilization basis, I think it just does not, you know, go through this reality check. And so this is basically kind of long-term consequences or long-term repercussions of what happened. So that would be my let's say more structural answer to that.
Thank you, Professor Makarychev. Let me then ask about the Kremlin's reluctance to step in and stop the bloodshed in Nagorno-Karabakh. You also mentioned it. Of course, there were attempts by Lavrov in early October. He tried to secure some humanitarian truce on the ground, but they were unsuccessful. So there are a lot of speculations of why Putin distanced himself until the last moment from its ally in Armenia, from these developments in the South Caucasus. Was this policy was well calculated or improvised throughout the conflict? What is your opinion on that?
Well, it's hard to say in this specific situation, but what I know from other conflicts in the post-Soviet area, I have some grounds to assume that it was more like improvised rather than well calculated. Because I don't think that Moscow has a good record of policy that would be based on, let's say, kind of advanced thinking and would have a clear expertise and that type of, you know, rational thinking. But in the meantime, we can also assume that this reluctance to get engaged into what happened was a part of Moscow's strategy for quite significant time. Because I think even before the conflict resumed, I think it was pretty clear that Moscow would prefer to disengage, that Moscow would prefer to treat its obligations in a very formal way, saying something which, by the way, is very much in line with the international law, that Russian obligation concern only territory of Armenia, internationally recognized territory of Armenia, and territory of Armenia is not in danger. So this is a formal argument, but I think it's also it's a political argument. Well, frankly speaking, I'm very critical of Russian foreign policy in many aspects, but here I do see a logic in that. Whether the Armenian side kind of miscalculated the degree of Russian commitment to protect Armenia in, let's say, in a broader sense, in the sense that would Armenia itself define for this, entire situation. Well, that's what I don't know. I think the Armenian side a little bit miscalculated in this respect.
I see. This war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, the post-conflict processes, the turbulence in Belarus, the recent elections in Georgia and Moldova, what do these developments in the buffer zone between Russia and the European Union, or let's say a broader West, transatlantic community, promise geopolitically?
Well, I think, nothing good to Moscow, frankly speaking. What I see is that most of the members of Eurasian Economic Union are going through very, I would say, important changes. And each case, of course, is individual, but in each case, I see these challenges that Moscow has to face. Well, Belarus is one of it. It's quite clear, something that happened after the August 9th election, so-called election, and something that changed completely political landscape in Belarus. And Putin did have a chance to, at least it did have a choice, it did have an alternative, either to help Belarusians to get rid of a dictator or to support Lukashenko. And yeah, we know what his preference, what his solution was. So again, as in the case of Pashinyan, Putin identifies himself and invests his his authority and his reputation into, let's say, figures who most likely would not stay for a long time where they stay right now. So in this sense, I do say that this is a factor of weakness. This semi-revolt, semi-revolution in Kyrgyzstan, well, of course, it happened, but I haven't seen any role for Russia over there. And the developments were quite, I would say, quite important. The crowd have been, quite explicit, not only demonstration, but they did something in this respect. And now we have, and these are countries of Eurasian Economic Union. Then you have Armenia, of course, with very, I would say, long-term consequences of what happened in terms of the way how Armenians would assess their aligned relations with Russia. Then you have Moldova that had I think it formally still has a status of observer, Eurasian Economic Union. We've had a new developments in Moldova that I don't think that someone in the Kremlin celebrates what happened with the new president of this country, who, by the way, immediately raised the issue of Russian troops in Transnistria. So I think it's not only domestic issues, I mean, all those ups and downs, but it also, many of them touch upon Russian geopolitical strategy. And Ukraine, I mean, Ukraine, it's kind of a stalemate for Russia. The fact that Surkov is out, that he does not have any, let's say, any practical role as a main designer of Ukrainian policy, I think it's quite telling. And the fact that people like Girkin explicitly claims that this Donetsk and Luhansk republics, I mean, the Ukrainian army could easily, in the military sense, could easily just destroy them in a matter of days or weeks, and it's only Russia that supports. I mean, all this runs against many things. It runs against this mythology of Eurasian Economic Union as a viable alternative, a better, much more upgraded, updated alternative to other integration units like European Union, for example. It also runs against this mythology of Russian world that, again, when it comes to reality check, looks a little bit more complicated than what we hear from Moscow often. So I think in the years to come, those challenges would escalate, and Moscow would definitely need to, let's say, more seriously deal with these issues on a more, let's say, on a greater scale. So I mean, if you have issues that escalate, definitely that might be a very big issue for Moscow.
Thank you, Professor Makarychev. These were my questions. I really thank you for this interesting interview and your valuable thoughts.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Rusif.
All the best.
Yeah, all the best to you. Thanks.